And Pope Francis makes a hospital visit this week after the Vatican announces he has a mild flu. A high-profile blessing of a same-sex couple occurs in Uruguay, and a Vatican Cardinal now reaffirms church teaching on Freemasonry. Joining me with analysis of these stories and more is the Papal Posse, editor-in-chief of thecatholicthing.org, Robert Royal, and canon lawyer and priest of the Archdiocese of New York, Father Gerald Murray. Gentlemen, Pope Francis's health has been a major focus of the week, with the Holy See press office stating that the 87-year-old Pope had a mild flu. On Wednesday, the Pope attended his Wednesday audience with his remarks read by an aide. And afterward, he was taken for an unannounced hospital visit for diagnostic tests and possibly a CT scan. Now, Father, this is another in a series of health issues Pope Francis has faced of late. I mean, he's been hospitalized 3 times in the last couple of years, most recently in June for a hernia. Bob, let me start with you. How serious do you think this is? And what are you hearing from sources in Rome?
Well, look, an 86, 87-year-old man having a series of health, I think we have to say crises like this, because when you can't speak and you have to have a diagnosis done and testing at his age, none of this is possibly good. And as you rightly say, there's been a lot of it. And it seems curious to me because we've seen this a couple of times when he seems to have what they call a lung infection. But then he's immediately involved kissing babies, hugging people, shaking hands and whatnot. And it doesn't seem like that's what you do when you have an infectious disease, or at least potentially an infectious disease. Now, he went to the Gemelli Hospital. They did whatever tests and diagnostics they needed to do. He was immediately back. So for now, it seems like things seem to be stable. But these are signs that, something is going on, and maybe something more than we're being told.
Father, your thoughts on this and the way the Vatican handles this. This was not pre-announced that he was going to the Gemelli Clinic. Maybe they didn't know and he just felt so bad they had to take him.
Yes, well, this reminds us of when he was hospitalized following a Sunday Angelus, where he never spoke. In fact, he was going to go into the hospital and then he needed surgery. So I think the Pope is a private person. He doesn't like to discuss his medical condition. I'll note that today, Thursday, he had an audience with the superior of the Fraternity of St. Peter. Then that audience lasted 25 minutes. So I think he's improved over what his condition was just a few days ago. But as Bob says, anything involving the lungs is serious when you're 87 years old. So I'm praying for the Pope, and I pray that this crisis pass, which seems to be the case if he's back at his normal duties today.
Conclave talk always ramps up when any pope falls ill. And today, an anonymous cardinal has written a memo to his brother electors. In the memo, he asserts that Francis has been, quote, vindictive, intolerant, ambiguous on faith and morals. And then he goes on to outline what should be the priorities of the next pontificate. It is signed, interestingly, Demos II, entitled Profile of the Next Pope. It's even been shared on social media by Cardinal Joseph Zen and others. Father, that nom de plume, Demos, was used by Cardinal Pell in a memo attributed to him just prior to his death. That missive also outlined priorities for the next conclave. Your thoughts on this?
Well, it's normal in in the life of the church when there are disagreements that people were going to air them. Now, in this case, since it's done anonymously, and is in the memo itself, it says that criticism is not welcome in the Vatican. And, I have to say, we've had a couple of cases where people were, told they can't live in their diocese, they can't live in Rome. Cardinal Burke, sad to say, his salary was cut off after the Pope decided that he was being a cause of disunity in the church, which I think is not correct. So, yeah, what we're facing here is a desire on the part of the author of this document and any of those people who agree with it, with a chance to say, what is the current situation and how should we approach when the next conclave comes up? What do we need to do? Do we need a continuation, or do we need a change of orientation, a change of direction in the Holy See? It's completely fair to discuss these things. It's no lack of respect because all of us are headed to the grave. And, in the Catholic Church, we pray for the Pope and we pray for his successor. And to air grievances, in my opinion, is truly an act of charity rather than keep them under the table as grumblings.
Bob, what do you make of the memo and the way in which it was issued? Look, it really does echo what Cardinal Pell had written. But what does it mean that this one is also anonymous? What does it say about the nature of synodality and the so-called collaborative dialogue in Rome?
Well, look, it's clear that somebody, and perhaps more than one somebody, fears that there could be a very serious backlash if his identity was revealed. It's a very, very well-written document. I mean, we need to say that. There's not an excess word in it. It's very direct and it's very clear about what is needed. There's been a lot of speculation of who could have written such a thing. I mean, I kind of think it sounds a little bit like Cardinal Zen, but Cardinal Zen is such an outspoken person. I don't know that he would hide his identity, although maybe there's some value in that. But it really puts on the table the fact that we really need a serious change of direction over what's been going on in the past 10 years, which has been an effort to reach out to the contemporary world. And it's just, instead of bringing people into the church, it's confused people inside of the church. And you may both remember when we covered the conclave that elected Francis, I was saying that what we needed was a pope who was going to pastorally implement what we had gotten from John Paul II and from Benedict. We had great ideas, but we hadn't implemented them at the parish level. I debated with people at the time that thought that, well, that kind of culture war was not working. Well, we've now tried this softer, inviting people in approach, and that seems not only to not attract the church, but it's caused trouble in the world. So thank God for whoever decided to put this out. We'll see what kind of effect that it has, but it's good that at least it came out, even if it had to be done anonymously.
Moving on, African Cardinal Robert Sarah was speaking at the Catholic University in Nairobi, and he was reacting to the African bishop's response to that Vatican directive on blessing of couples in irregular relationships, fiducia supplicans. He said, "I think fiducia supplicans has a response from the African bishops very clear. I was very proud to hear the African bishops rejecting completely this text. Father, defiance to this directive on blessings of same-sex couples and couples in irregular situations, it seems to have no sign of stopping. How significant is it that Cardinal Sarah openly support his brother bishops here?"
Well, this is another reason to praise Cardinal Sarah, because he's a no-nonsense guy. He speaks the truth. He understands the situation in the world. He's very attuned to what's happening in the life of the church. And as an African whose parents were converted from paganism, he himself in his own life embodies what it means to embrace Christianity and to try to live the fullness of that faith by accepting the doctrines of the church. So I praise him. The African bishops have given a lesson, I think, to the bishops in Europe and America and elsewhere, that we do not agree to anything that contradicts revelation, the Word of God, the natural law, the teaching of the church. And it's manifest to me and to them and to so many of us. If you say that two people who engage in immoral behavior deserve a blessing as a couple, that you are contradicting the Catholic faith. And that's simply what Cardinal Sarah is saying.
Bob, we're hearing from the Vatican and other cardinals, such as McElroy in San Diego, rather condescendingly it seems, that African resistance to this document is merely cultural or unique to that continent. McElroy is actually calling the opposition neocolonialism. Your thoughts?
Yeah, he's also said that this is evidence of decentralization in the church, how different parts of the world can have different approaches to things. Look, I don't know how we can call ourselves Catholic, which means a universal church, that God's revelation is the revelation of the truth for all people in every culture, no matter what age they are living in, and ours included. When you talk about these divisions as if it's decentralization and we can tolerate one thing happening in Africa, another thing happening in Germany, and et cetera, et cetera. This is not decentralization. This is division. Let's just say this frankly. And as we have on the highest authority, a house divided against itself cannot stand. This is not a trivial issue. The question of homosexuality goes to the nature of human beings, and the nature of human beings reflects who God is and who he created us to be. So we can try to paper this over all we want with this. It's a cultural difference, but the culture is the Catholic culture. It's the Catholic culture that is meant to be the same for everyone on earth. So other cardinals can make claims. Mostly people in the United States and Europe are the ones who are going to be making these dissenting kind of claims. And even at the Vatican, I don't think that their attempt to establish this by a diktat is going to prevail over what has been the universal teaching from the very beginning of Catholicism.
Well, in other fallout from this fiducia document, a bishop in Uruguay has issued a statement clarifying the nature of a blessing given to a celebrity same-sex couple there shortly after their civil marriage. The bishop says the blessing was authorized by the local nunciature and was fully in line with the new Vatican document permitting these blessings. Now, Father, what are the implications of this and of the nuncio, the Pope's representative there, not only weighing in but authorizing this blessing?
Well, if you've seen the film of the blessing, you know how disgraceful it is. And this is the fruit of fiducia supplicans. We have to make no mistake. Two people who entered into a so-called civil marriage, two men, and thereby they reject Catholic teaching, which says that only marriage consists of a union of a man and a woman. So two men who claim to be married are in violation of their obligation to profess the Catholic faith in its fullness. Then you see the priest blessing them. These people have pledged to commit mortal sin with each other. And the priest is blessing them and uttering all the same kind of thoughts that happens when a priest blesses a couple at marriage. This is, the image prevails over the explanation. They try to explain we're blessing the couple, not the union. That's silliness. And it's really insulting to people to claim that as a rational explanation of what's going on here. We know what's going on here. They're trying to legitimize the homosexual lifestyle, and in doing so, they hope to get past, as they would view, a history of discrimination against people who engage in immorality. There's no discrimination when you teach God's truth. Let's just say that quite clearly. So this is a disgraceful thing that happened in Uruguay. Sad to say, something similar happened in Spain. It's just going to go all over the globe. Bob was right. A universal church, universal truth has to have universal practice. And this kind of stuff, this is why the church is really in serious crisis.
Bob, given the resistance we are seeing to this document and these examples of priests and bishops endorsing and finding ways to express this fiducia document in their parishes and their communities, not to mention Father James Martin, who continues to post his blessings, are we on a collision course here to schism? Is that where this is headed? When you have such hardened lines, the Africans on one side, traditionalists on one side, and then the other side who are moving with the Vatican on this.
Yeah, look, the very people who quote fiducia supplicans don't follow it. These blessings, these so-called blessings, are supposed to be private. They're not supposed to be formal. In the case of Uruguay, if I have this right, these two people were well-known celebrities. So, the fact that this was going to take place in a church or a chapel was intended to project a certain message. Even if, what they've been trying to do with the actual document is say, well, the words affirm the traditional doctrine, but we've got this development that's going to allow us to do something else. This can't help but create a clash between two things. And I think we're going to see, I think Father's exactly right. It's not like this is the end, that we've seen, oh no, this was an abuse because two very public persons announced this, and then it sends out the message that the church is now allowing this sort of thing. This is going to happen again and again. And the people who are going to be most under the pressure, by the way, are parish priests who want to stand up for the teaching and maybe don't have a bishop like the the African bishops, or they have a bishop who doesn't want to touch a very complicated celebrity situation. So, look, I don't know whether it will end in schism, but the very way that the document was set up can't help but create these divisions, which who knows where they will end.
Yeah. Father, before I end this topic, there was a release by the German Bishops' Conference, the official German Bishops' Conference, released a piece essentially saying they were quoting the Moscow Patriarch, who has taken umbrage with this document from the Vatican and saying it's immoral. And the spin from the German bishops was that those who are opposed to these blessings are getting support from Moscow and the Russians. Your take on kind of the political overlay of this as it continues to progress?
Let's not make this into an issue of Russian nationalism. It has nothing to do with that. Cardinal Sarah and Orthodox bishops all agree on one thing: sodomy is immoral. We don't bless couples who engage in sodomy. It's as simple as that. We love those people who do that, and we call on them to repent and to leave that sinful lifestyle. That's the Christian message. This other thing that we're doing now with fiducia is disgraceful. It makes the church look ridiculous. And it's very clear the people who want to do this, as Bob said, they're just going to keep going, or they're going to do this. Say, oh, the nuncio in Uruguay said this is fine. Cardinal Fernandez thinks this is great. Of course this is going to cause problems in the life of the church that aren't going away. This is why that memo we talked about earlier is so important. Do we want continuity with chaos, or do we want the church's life to be renewed by renewed attention to the true magisterium taught by John Paul II and Benedict, which never, ever included the blessing of homosexual couples?
Gentlemen, the Vatican's Dicastery for Promoting Integral Human Development has announced a theme for the 110th World Day of Migrants and Refugees. That theme, which will be celebrated on Sunday, the 29th, is God Walks with His People. And the Vatican also released a series of images, which we'll put on screen, with Pope Francis interacting with migrants and refugees. Bob, what is the messaging meant to convey here? On a prudential matter like migration and refugees, which according to church teaching, governments are entitled to deal with as they see fit. But what's happening here?
Yeah, I think this is just one of the main themes that the Pope, from the very first, remember his first trip as Pope was to Lampedusa, which is an island very close to North Africa. He seems to regard this as the most, along with climate, as the most important human question at this moment in history. And it's clear to me, if we just want to begin with the politics, that both in Europe and as we know in the United States, this immigration question is front and center, and there is a strong popular reaction against these massive numbers of people who are arriving from the developing world. You know, one of the first things the Pope did was put up a group statue in St. Peter's Square of people who are migrants. If you go into St. Peter's Square to the left-hand side, there's this sort of dark thing that's a very striking statue. But to put that in St. Peter's Square as if it's somehow central to Catholicism, it just seems to me to be inappropriate. For them to proclaim this, good. It's good to think that God is with people who are traveling and are exiled or have to leave their own country. But man, this is not going to make, it's not going to be very successful in terms of how nations politically and their peoples are going to respond to such a call.
Father, the Vatican says these images highlight migration and fraternity. What do you think these images convey, given that many nations, including our own, and as Bob said, are grappling with immigration and how to handle the border crisis?
Yeah, no, I think they're an endorsement of what's happening in the world right now, which is that people are entering countries illegally, and governments in Europe are then receiving them and offering them hospitality, housing, and a payment for food and all the rest. So it basically comes down to don't turn away those who come to your shores. The problem with that, Bob just pointed out, I don't need to repeat it. The idea that in the United States, during the Biden presidency, we've had more than 7 million people enter the country illegally, this is astounding. It needs to be discussed and decided democratically by the American people, but as you said, Raymond, governments have the right to regulate who comes into their countries, and that's important because you don't want social dislocation, or you don't want the disappearance of your democracy if you had such a group of people who wanted to get rid of democracy and decide to be governed otherwise.
Let me move on to other topics. After apparently opening a door to Freemasonry in a February 24th interview with Vatican media outlets, Bishop Antonio Stagliano appeared to cut short any speculation that the Vatican's position on Freemasonry might be open to dialogue. He said, "The Masonic heresy is one which is fundamentally aligned with the Arian heresy. At bottom, it was Arius who imagined that Jesus was the great architect of the universe, denying the divinity of Christ." Gents, there seems to be some doublespeak here, as Stagliano was reportedly in attendance at that February 16th meeting with the Masons and Vatican representatives. Father, what should we make of that remark? Is the Vatican trying to walk back the efforts to create dialogue with Freemasonry because of the global outrage over it?
I think there is damage control going on here because this is, unexpected. The Holy See itself, in last November, Cardinal Fernandez issued a decree at the request of a bishop from the Philippines, again saying Catholics are prohibited from joining Masonic associations. I reviewed what went on at that meeting, and it was shocking. Archbishop Stagliano's comments were laudatory of this new approach to the Masonic teachings and all the rest. I'm glad he scaled back on it. But sad to say, why is it that every group which is hostile to the Catholic Church, such as the Communist Party or the Freemasons, they have this welcome mat thrown out at them saying, come on in, let's try to figure out a way to get along. And meanwhile, people like the Latin Mass, this is constantly being restricted, and they're finding themselves to be orphans in their own parishes. There's a big contradiction going on here.
Well, I'm going to get to that in a moment. But Bob, before we leave this topic, Stagliano, while seeming to affirm the Church's ban on Freemasonry, he also used fiducia, the blessing of irregular couples, as an example of mercy that applies to all, even when it comes to Catholics previously excommunicated for being Masons. Is this more sort of the mixed messaging?
Yeah, I would call this a kind of a sentimentality that thinks that dialogue is necessary with absolutely everybody and that there aren't stark differences. When Jesus said, "I came not to bring peace but a sword," do we ever think about what he meant by that? I mean, there's a real division that's going to take place of people who are going to follow him as opposed to people who are going to follow something else. And I think it's useful for our American viewers to realize that Freemasonry is not just a fraternal organization in Europe the way it seems to be here in the United States, like the Shriners or even like the Knights of Columbus. This has been a militantly atheist organization. And I don't know what possible dialogue they think that they can carry out with people who for years have been trying to destroy the church. And you can tell yourself that you need to dialogue with everyone, but there are actually people with whom you cannot dialogue. This is why sometimes there are hot wars in the world.
Yeah, well, Bob, let me give you an example of a group that there's no dialogue with, and that would be the traditional Latin Mass community. In a recent column, the Archbishop of Chicago, Cardinal Blaise Cupich, insisted that the celebration of the traditional Latin Mass, as approved by the late Pope Benedict, quote, impoverishes the Church. And this week we learned that Cardinal Vincent Nichols, the Archbishop of Westminster in London, banned the celebration of the old rite during the Eastern Triduum. Edward Penton also reports that Pope Francis has received, as we mentioned earlier, the Superior General of the Priestly Fraternity of St. Peter for private audience at the Vatican. Details of that meeting we don't have yet. Father, what do you make of all the animus toward this ancient Latin rite, given there are so many Eastern rites in the Catholic Church and other forms of liturgy that go untouched, and any pagan group that comes in from the Amazon are treated as if Athanasius just walked in?
Well, it's again unsatisfactory to say the least. It's contradictory of the claims that are made constantly that inclusion is the theme of our church. The Pope said in Lisbon, everyone, 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 that's who the church is for. But then you turn around and bishops are either on their own decision or, pushed by Cardinal Roche at the Congregation for Divine Worship told, we're shutting down the Latin Mass in your parish. And it's again, lack of charity. We talk about this frequently. Now, what lies behind it is an interesting thing. If you live in a free market country, you realize competition is good because it forces both sides to make the best product at the cheapest price. Monopolies, on the other hand, deprive people of the ability to follow the best product that they find on the market. And, we shouldn't say competition in the church doesn't mean when you have different varieties of worship styles. If everything is legitimate, it should all be permitted. So, again, charity is the keynote of Christ's life on earth. He taught the truth. He taught it in love. Why can't we show charity toward those that like the old Mass and let them have it in their parish church?
Bob, apparently, there was this dialogue with Freemasonry we talked about, but, God help anyone who wishes for a reverent style of Catholic worship, particularly young people. Do you see any awareness that by issuing these edicts by fiat, you're repelling a whole new group of Catholics or people who are interested and fascinated by the mystery of ancient Catholic worship?
Yeah, with all due respect to Cardinal Cupich in Chicago, our previous pontiff said that the Latin Mass would lead to mutual enrichment, that there would be you want to talk about dialogue, there would be a dialogue between the ancient and what's modern. And you're quite right that for some reason, and perhaps because of the thinness of contemporary culture, a lot of young people are searching. And if they're not searching in Buddhism or yoga or mindfulness or whatever, they come upon the depth of and the riches of the Latin liturgy, and it moves them. It moves them because God moves human beings. So, yeah, I don't think that there's much consideration of that. And if I can put it this way, there's a certain rigidity in rejecting what could be an enriching element in the church, not an impoverishing element.
Yeah, no, definitely a rigidity there in Rome, and a blindness and deafness to what clearly people want. So now you've got people packing into hospital chapels and hotel meeting rooms and ballrooms on Sundays. It's ridiculous to expel them from a parish. 3 new consultors of the Synod on Synodality were announced this week. Sister Bridget Wheeler, who's a professor of theology, Tricia Bruce, who's a president of the Association of the Sociology of Religion and a professor at Notre Dame, as well as Maria Clara Lucetti Bingemer. Now, she is a professor of theology from Rio de Janeiro. Here's what they all have in common. They all have expressed support for female ordination. Sister Bridget Wheeler has said, I believe it must be possible for women who feel called to do so to be admitted to the priesthood. Father, and then Bob, these appointments show a full court press by the Vatican to keep this priest, deacon, ordination of women conversation alive at the Synod, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. And it's, the old axiom in Washington, personnel is policy. If you want to have a discussion on women's ordination, you have to have people there who are going to defend Catholic truth and say the church has never done it because the church has never thought it could. Instead, we have this attitude of we have to make all things new, meaning we have to take what was old and get rid of it and invent new things. Did Jesus Christ know what he was doing? All the time, in every way, absolutely. He did not choose any women to be his apostles. He did not name them the first bishops and priests of the church. And the apostles never chose women to be among the first deacons. This is determinative. We believe this is all revealed by God. To treat it as an open discussion is another source of disunity in the church. This has been shut down by John Paul II and Benedict, but now it's been, revivified. Now, I have to say, Pope Francis has said he doesn't believe in women priests on a number of occasions. But the follow-through is to say, okay, I don't believe it for the following reasons, therefore we're not going to keep talking about it. But that seems to be what's happening.
Bob, this synod on synodality in October is going to be a barn burner. I mean, everything seems to be coming to a head, and everything is up for grabs and on the table.
Yeah, you know, it's very funny that meeting that the Pope had with his Council of Cardinals, his advisors, the same sort of thing cropped up just a few weeks ago, and now we see this. And yet, when the people actually do meet together, even in those dinner tables, as I like to think of them, they're all sitting around as if they're at the prayer breakfast or something in Washington. These hot-button issues tend to get put aside. We thought that there was going to be an LGBT element in the final document that came out of last November's synod, and of course that was just blocked by people who were doing the voting. And I think the same is here true. But there seems to be a desire to keep those pots boiling, even though when real synodality is applied and people actually have a chance to express their opinions about them, they reject them. So, you know, we're in a synodality that's being run by people who are basically authoritarian.
Yeah, well, to bring it all together, it sort of reflects what that memo, that anonymous memo by a cardinal, and what Cardinal Pell had written before his death, which is this authoritarian push that is deaf to all comers and deaf to those in the church. Gentlemen, we will leave it there. For commentary by Robert Royal and Father Gerald Murray, you can visit thecatholicthing.org. Thank you, gents.